we're just going to take a moment and talk about some of the things you can be doing on a daily basis to help keep yourself healthy so you can live the life that you've worked so hard at and get the most out of your labors. So let's start off. I'll just give a quick background. I'm a chiropractor, specialized in acupuncture and nutrition. How did I choose low back pain and giving yourself a break from your workstation as the subject? Well, being a chiropractor, I treat a lot of individuals with low back pain, and it's much easier to help inform you now and, in fact, have you come visit me for wellness purposes than allow you to hurt your back. So quickly, just some statistics. Low back pain affects roughly 80% of the population at some point in time. This is the amazing thing. Up to 20% of the population at any given time does have some degree of back pain. So let's just take a moment. I'm going to give you some ideas of what you can incorporate into your daily routine to help ameliorate or avoid ever experiencing this. So on page 13, we've got an article titled "Give Yourself a Break." And I've constructed this. I'd like for you to, if you're interested, write down a few different things there. The first item would be micro break. The concept of a micro break is that for every 20 minutes to 30 minutes of seated inactivity, you take the time to stand up and get some motion in your spine. Because low back pain accounts for so much morbidity or suffering and so much loss of productivity, roughly $7.5 billion. A study in 2004 indicated that roughly $7.5 billion were lost due to loss of productivity from low back pain. This is a wise investment of your time and of your organization's support for these micro breaks. So let me just quickly describe what constitutes a micro break. From a seated position, it's ideal to have your workspace positioned such that there's a 90-degree angle relative to the floor of your leg and then your thigh. So we want a 90-degree angle here and the same angulation from our thigh to our spine. This type of posture, and better viewed from the side oftentimes, is easy to maintain for the first 5 minutes that we're seated and working. After that point in time, what tends to happen is our back inches backward and our head drops forward, and this slump that we're all so familiar with, myself included, easily occurs. So the graphic that I've put on this page for you, it's titled Figure 1, Brugger's Posture, demonstrates just this, that by providing muscular control, by allowing the pelvis to move forward, and all this, what this feels like to us effectively is that we're moving our stomach forward. By allowing this motion, it automatically pulls our head into alignment over our shoulders and reestablishes the normal curve in our low back. Our spines look remarkably similar to many other mammals, with one difference. We have curves in our low back and in our neck, which concave forward. No other mammal has this curve in the low back that moves forward. This is a blessing because it allows us to do the upright work that we do, and it comes with challenges. One of those challenges is a seated posture is one of the roughest things that you can do for your body. Oftentimes, when individuals come to see me, if they don't do hard manual labor, they say, "How did this happen? I sit at a desk all day." And I say, "That's how it happened. You sit at a desk all day." So a couple other things I'd like for you to write down. Micro break is the concept that roughly every 20 minutes to half hour you get up and move. Now, I tell my patients to do this on the quarters, quarter after and quarter to the hour. Set an alarm, whether it's on your iPhone, Android phone, or if it's on your watch. When that alarm goes off, your job is to do just this, a micro break. You're working, you're seated. All you have to do is stand up, do an overhead reach like this. Automatically, by reaching overhead, it reestablishes this low back curve, the same one that you've insulted for the last half hour by letting it go backward. So overhead reach, deep inhalation, and then exhale. Drop the arms down by your sides. That overhead reach is enough to reestablish proper motion in the back. That is all it takes. You don't have to stand up and do calisthenics for a half hour. Standing up, doing an overhead reach like that helps to set the intrinsic muscular control systems. And the central nervous system controls all of that. The other factor I'd like to discuss for you right now is the process of going from seated to a standing position. This sounds funny. When I address this with individuals who aren't in pain, they look at me like, why are you telling me this? I know how to stand up. And when I tell folks who are in pain how to do this, they think I'm God. So this is good information right here. From a seated position, what you'll want to do is position yourself such that your dominant leg, in my case my right leg, falls somewhere between the two front supports. The heel itself is just tucked barely under the seated portion, the pan of the chair I'm sitting on. My other leg is positioned pretty much as it was in the seated position. What I'm going to do now is apply force through the leg that's between these front legs of the chair, and I'm going to lift with my chest up. The seat to stand looks like this. Could everybody see how that differs from the way I know I've caught myself getting up, where I lean forward and shove off my legs? One time, no big deal, as I just did it up here. But when that's the way you sit to stand all throughout the day, there's an aggregate insult to the system. So again, a seat to stand would be positioning your dominant leg with the foot underneath there, shoving off that and lifting as if you're lifting from your chest. My tie, if something was attached to here lifting me up, that type of position in your standing position. So this wraps up my time with you right now. I'll have another 5 minutes later on, and we'll discuss workstation arrangement, and I'm going to teach you how to construct a workstation to sit properly and then tell you don't sit there too long. Thank you all so much. A great question was posed earlier. It was asked, how can you tell which leg is your dominant leg? When I had recommended doing the seat to stand by centering your dominant leg in between the legs of the chair, the best way to tell that is if someone were to roll a soccer ball to you and ask you to kick it, which leg would you extend to do that? If that answer is either leg, then you're pretty safe shooting with either leg for your sit to stand, but your dominant leg is most oftentimes the same side as your dominant arm would be, or the arm which you write with. I'm going to redirect you again to page 13. At the bottom of this page, I've got a workstation checklist. This is what we'll be running over very briefly now. The first item on here is the seat height being adjustable. With an office chair, it's ideal to have one that has a pneumatic control where you can actually control the seat height relative to the ground. And what we're looking to achieve here is that 90-90 rule. What I mentioned earlier was a 90-degree angle of your upper leg to the lower leg, and then another 90-degree angle of your leg relative to your torso. This is an ideal. It just so happens, I got lucky, I'm short enough, or tall enough, that this chair is working perfectly for me. But with an office chair, it's ideal that you can adjust that and achieve that type of alignment. The second factor, I believe I've got it in order like this, is that the feet and knees should be at the 90. Arm rests are ideal. Although we don't want to be dependent on them, it's ideal to have that in place, especially when we're doing work with a mouse, okay? And there are multiple different ergonomic designs. The concept of ergonomic is probably familiar to everybody. In the 1980s, mid to late 80s, early 90s, there was a big push towards making environments more friendly to the human body. This was fantastic, and a lot of the ideas that were born out of that movement were spot on target. The problem was they were finding ways to support the human body without engaging the human body in the process of that support. So now what we're recognizing is functional engagement of the muscles through things like the micro brake that I mentioned to you earlier, or functional rehabilitation that we engage whenever people do injure themselves from sitting inactively too long. Those are the missing component. So ergonomic design is the first pier, and that they were spot on there. But the second factor is employing movement throughout your day to keep your body engaged. So let's take another look here. Workstation checklist, good lumbar support. Again, the key here is that we want that to be more of a cue for us, that when our back comes back and touches that lumbar support, whoa, now I need to engage and tilt forward. I need to stand, do the overhead reach that Dan taught us, and sit back down. So that support is less of an orthotic. It's there for less for you to lean into and more as a reminder to keep your posture where we want it to be. Seat back should be able to recline to 95 degrees, 95 to 105 degrees. The concept there is, again, that you're not going to be seated at a chair where you're actually pressing up against the back the entire time, but you want to be able to hold that position with your own internal muscular control. That is what will keep your spine healthy, okay? Then we've got tiltable seat pan. The objective here goes back to the figure, which I've included on the lower left portion of the page. The entire objective is that the seat pan can actually be angled forward. The way to test this is if you would set a marble on this chair, if it would roll off the front aspect of the chair, then the seat pan would be tilted forward. And the entire purpose of this is to bring the pelvis into forward motion and align the spine as illustrated in this cogwheel picture here. So the entire take-home message there is get the center of the body pushed out enough that it centers the head over the shoulders and encourages proper alignment in the low back. And then tilt the seat backward for reclining work. This is most often the way people set these tiltable seat pans. Whenever I go through and do a workstation audit for somebody and evaluate their seating position, they most often have that seat pan tilted backward. Well, that's because it feels nice to be dropped back into the back of the chair because we're being supported. But this is actually the worst thing we could do for our spinal health because we're reliant. Now this chair, which oftentimes isn't ideally aligned, becomes our orthotic rather than keeping our body engaged. So take-home messages, micro breaks throughout your day, and I like to tell patients on the quarters, quarter after and quarter till. And when you stand up, do the overhead reach. Another functional movement that's very good, and I have torn dress pants showing this in the office before, it's a warning, is a squat like this. This is a great functional movement. This keeps our entire body and spine very well stretched. That might look strange in the office, but the overhead reach you can get away with. Just say, a chiropractor told me that this is good. Make sure you're taking your micro breaks, get your seats evaluated, and making sure that everything's ergonomically stable. And please feel free to contact me. My contact info is at the bottom of this page, and look on E4E's website for my blog starting next week. Thank you all.